Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Startup Talks. We are joined today by Diala Daoud. She has loads of experience working with startups, over 125 startups she's collaborated with in the MENA region. And in addition to that, she's partnered with 25 plus mentors and over 30 online and offline activations with over 4,500 participants. She's also the co-founder of Launch Dubai, better known as Launch DXB, and currently the business expansion consultant for Saudi Arabia at Astrolabs. She's a keen traveler. Last time I spoke to her, she was in Saudi Arabia, and all of a sudden she's ended up in Istanbul. Hi, Diala, how are you doing?
Hello there. Hi. Thank you for inviting me to join you today.
That's great. So, what are you doing in Istanbul? You're exploring partnerships with between Saudi Arabia and Istanbul.
Exactly. So actually, as you might know, the ecosystem here is quite booming as well. In one
Mm-hmm.
of your earlier episodes, you invited Philip, and a lot of the reports from Magnet actually show what the activity is taking on in Istanbul is like.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of booming industries in here, especially in the tech space, and also special focus on the gaming industry in specific. So, out of curiosity, honestly, I wanted to explore this ecosystem in first hand. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm visiting for a couple of months of remote work to
Mm-hmm.
connect with as many ecosystem players and also as startups as I can. Probably also pitching the idea for them to move to the MENA region might be to the GCC region in specific, where I
Mm-hmm.
actually help startups expand, might be on the agenda too.
All right. You've been working with startups for quite a lot of years, from Lebanon to Dubai, now in Saudi, now in Turkey. You've interacted with quite a few in the UAE. Uh, what sort of vibes do you get from the whole regional, holistic approach kind of thing? What sort of vibes do you see? I mean, it's grown a lot, but regional countries with totally different dynamics, especially Pakistan, they're also catching up very fast. So, what do you think? Where does the whole region stands at the moment?
So actually, like it's quite interesting to keep an eye on different ecosystems and to check what's happening there. Also,
Mm-hmm.
keeping a close eye on the growth of specific startups or industries in different regions is quite interesting for me on a personal level, and really amazes me every single time I check what's happening in a specific industry or a specific region.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, you find different things that really somehow differentiates or makes each ecosystem stand by itself and have a differentiating factor of what's happening in there. For example, in Lebanon, let's say you find that the majority of startups who are active there, currently I'm not sure yet how many startups are still operating in the country given the economic situation you are facing. But the majority of the startups I used to work with in Lebanon were actually from a social entrepreneurship background.
Mm-hmm.
Given the nature of the things, how challenging it was for us to find our basic services around, from commuting to waste management to whatever other basic utilities we all need, these concepts and these initiatives, they all emerged as private entities labeled under startups and tech enabled solutions. Whereas, for example, in countries like the UAE, let's say, given that you have so many different, a lot of support actually from the government and the ecosystem itself, and sometimes literally you don't have to worry, for example, on where your food actually goes or the food waste goes, because you know certain municipalities, certain cities, and even the government itself is pitching in to support on this front and solve this problem for people. You find people are more oriented towards the more deep tech and the more literally deep tech enabled solutions, who wanted to just explore and invest in the future. So somehow, like a common trend you can see in the UAE, literally people investing in the future, whereas in Lebanon, somehow, unfortunately, given the situation, the majority of those I worked with were just investing in the present to make other people's life easier and other people's life even give them access to specific and even basic solutions or services we all have and we all have easy access to on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. And I saw a recent post of yours where you said one in 10 startups is a fintech, right? That's receiving funding is a fintech. How do you feel the fintech space is shaping up in the region, especially in Pakistan? I would like to know.
So eventually, like the fintech space is quite still emerging in the whole region. So you find different entities and different governments trying as much as they can to empower these new solutions and to support the founders as much as they can.
Mhm.
However, it will take some time for them to be able to legally incorporate these new entities and to give them the compliance and the rules and regulations that are needed. So,
Mhm.
for example, one of the many well-known hubs in the region are for fintech startups in specific is UAE. But still, for you to incorporate your fintech solution in UAE, it's quite a lengthy process and requires a lot of third-party approvals and permits from here and there. So many governments are trying as much as they can to empower these solutions, including UAE, Bahrain, Saudi, and Egypt. And many of them are also they're initiating some solutions like FinTech Saudi, for example, which is backed up by Sama and by NISA. You have, for example, the fintech Cairo, fintech Cairo, or fintech Egypt. If I'm not mistaken, it's also backed up by the central bank of Egypt. So the central banks are trying to literally step in and support these startups as much as they can. However, I'm not sure honestly how easy the incorporation process is for them. From tech development, we are having like a lot of emerging talent who are really amazing talent around who are able to help these startups get up and running with their solutions. So the matter remains for many startups, honestly, on that front of finding the legal framework to operate in these specific countries. So this is honestly how it's going. Reflecting on the numbers, yes, around 1 in 10 startups I sit with who received funding so far, they are quite interested in expanding to Saudi Arabia. So given the nature of how things are going, given that this is an emerging market, it's not somehow saturated or full of well-developed solutions like the UAE, for example. Many startups are eyeing this market for the possible opportunities for expanding and for growing in this specific geography.
And uh, where do you see Pakistani founders because stand in the region? Because there is the Kareem story, then there is
Exactly.
Trucker, then there is Truckshare, then there is now Retailo. Retailo is now there in Saudi as well. So where do you see Pakistani founders? I'm sure you must have interacted with quite a few.
Exactly.
Where do you see them standing?
So eventually, like now I'm reviewing my data. Around 5% of the founders I sit with, they're actually Pakistani founders.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are based out of Pakistan. The others are actually based in different parts of the region, including primary startups I work with are from the three biggest ecosystems in the region, Saudi, UAE, and Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So the majority of them, I assume, come from Egypt and the UAE, given they wanted to expand to Saudi. But as you mentioned, that we have amazing Pakistani talents who are either leading their own companies in the region or actually outside the region, still in Pakistan, and who wanted to expand to these new markets. So I sit with quite a lot of Pakistani founders, in fact.
That's great. And any plans of you coming to Pakistan? Then this is a wonderful place to explore as well because we've broken all records during the past 5 years. I mean, the numbers may not be that big. The growth may be just 2x or 3x, but potential is speculated at over 20 x's within the next 2 3 years. Do you see it that way?
Exactly. Honestly, like it's again, I believe like I can actually share some feedback here on what happened in the Lebanese ecosystem. We had such a quiet, booming, and such a really like interesting and empowering ecosystem all in all, based on the so many different brilliant solutions that were being pushed in the ecosystem.
Mhm.
So we just needed some external support and some external funding, either from VCs directly being deploying capital in Lebanese startups, or even from the Circular 331, which was managed with the Lebanese Central Bank to offer extra support in terms of financial support to incubators and accelerators to support Lebanese startups to emerge. So I believe that similar thing is somehow replicating in Pakistan, given that now Pakistani startups have more access to funds from external resources. The ecosystem by itself is going to proliferate even more and more. And visiting Pakistan, definitely it's on the list. Number one, my Pakistani friend is literally sitting next to me. And she was yesterday telling us about how beautiful the country is and how we should visit it. And the second thing, also the fintech space in Pakistan is quite booming.
Yeah.
I was also keeping a close eye on the Fintech Pakistan initiative that was being driven by the MENA Fintech Association and the Pakistani Central Bank. Unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, it was cancelled last year, and this year they're planning to actually do it on an online version. So it's quite interesting to honestly see all of these solutions, and also being close friend with the founder of the MENA Fintech Association, Amir Khan, who is Pakistani by origin as well. I do also know about the so many brilliant solutions in this space launching or emerging from Pakistan itself. So Pakistan should be next on the list.
Hopefully, I think that conference that Namir and Pakistan FinTech Association are uh, working on, I think it's just around the corner. It should be
Exactly.
anytime soon. It'll be really enlightening to attend that. Now, Diala, uh, these are all the good things that are happening and hopefully will continue to happen. What do you think are the shortfalls that need to be addressed? Right, because there is cross pollination, right? Like truck shares acquisition by trucker. Then I already gave you the example of Retailer, right? Then today, a local startup called Abhi raised a bridge investment of $20 million here in Pakistan. They're planning on a Series A sometime next year, and also looking to expand into UAE and other regional countries like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and all those places. So, what do you think are the shortfalls right now that needs to be addressed? A holistic approach, not to a particular country.
So, like pitfalls somehow from startups, I believe the moment they wanted to expand, they should understand that expanding to a new market requires some specific considerations for the new market you wanted to enter.
Mhm.
So it's not just a matter of having a brilliant solution that worked, let's say, in specific geography and just expanding the solution to a new market. A proper market expansion study should be conducted. So don't just rely on the opportunities available there. Properly do map out what are the different opportunities available, the threats, where do you have a competitive advantage, and then assess your next steps for market expansion. That's number one. Number two, also, which is a pitfall I realize many startups I work with challenge or are challenged by somehow, is that they fail on hiring local team on the ground for their own startups expansions to new geographies. So they believe that, okay, remaining back home or even opening a small representative office in this new country will help us expand to it. And they fail on the front of understanding the importance of hiring either a person who literally is a national of this new geography, or is one who has a really vast years of experience working in this geography on board. Having these people on board can help on so many different fronts. So please, as founders, do not oversee this or do not overlook it. And the third common challenge that many founders keep on nagging about is not being able to find the right talents in general for their startups or for helping develop their new solutions. So for this, like literally just look around you, see how things are going, and how now you have access to a really wider range and wider pool of talents. So if you are challenged in hiring the right talents locally, think about outsourcing it to people outside of your country. Specific tasks still can be outsourced, whereas others know should be done in-house. However, assess what are the best options for you out of here, and how you can hire and have these right talents on board to help you push through your solution. And lastly, the common challenge or struggle everybody keeps on nagging about in the startup space is the lack of funding.
Yeah.
Look around you, there's no lack of funding, literally. Startups are raising hundreds of millions of dollars every single month. Even if I'm not mistaken, by Magnet recently, they announced that we are about to hit the 2 billion mark of startups funding for 2021. So startups received massive funding to date. It's a matter of you probably not understanding which VCs to target and how to start a conversation with these VCs in specific. So going back to studying and understanding the portfolio of the VC you wanted to target, assessing what a match or how how much do you match with their own selection criteria, preference criteria, how much do you fit into their portfolio is also a really important task for you to do to navigate through this challenge all in one. So these are literally some of the 4 super common challenges I usually get to learn about from the startups I work with.
Okay. Now in Pakistan, because Kareem was the first, it was among the first regional unicorns, but in Pakistan, Kareem was really really big, right? It still is, but and now after Uber's takeover of Kareem, a lot of people disintegrated, and for some reason in Pakistan, most, not most, quite a bit of startup founders are ex-Kareemers, right? Ex-Kareem executives. Uh, do you get, and it's because it's actually being classified as sort of like a mafia kind of thing, which
Oh,
is,
wow.
but I take it in a positive way. If it is, then it's good. At least it's creating opportunities, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, uh, I know Kareem was very big when it started in the UAE as well, right? Was very popular among investors too, because at that time investors were also new to the venture space and startup space, right? So it attracted quite a lot of traction at that time. Is this mafia effect also in the rest of the region, in your opinion?
And actually, yes, you come across many brilliant founders who are ex-Kareemers, ex-Ubers on their platforms. But honestly, instead of thinking about it as a mafia, I would think about it that honestly, on a personal level, I just think to myself, what an amazing culture Kareem had to actually empower its staff to think beyond being just C-suite executives in Kareem and taking the leap of faith to start something on their own. And if you also like literally do a small research of ex-Kareem or ex-Uber on LinkedIn, you're gonna find so many different founders in there.
Mm.
And yes, you would literally, I was thinking about it last time, and you would find, I'm not sure who posted something similar to this, and I was intrigued to check it. I literally went online and Googled these two, LinkedIn search these two keywords, and I received a really long list of contacts I'm already with. So I wouldn't call it a mafia, although they're super widespread around. I would probably call it like the Kareem school and the Uber school of
You can
launching.
add a plus sign before the word mafia. Take it in a positive way.
Actually, like, it's somehow an entrepreneurial school by itself. To be able to graduate this huge number of founders, regardless whether they make it or not, but them to have the grit to actually take action and start something on their own is something to salute Kareem for, honestly. But yes, you would find many of these founders in the UAE and across the region too. Even in Egypt, like many successful founders who recently raised a huge amount of funds are actually ex-Kareems and Ubers.
Yeah, actually it's branching out now. Before it was Kareem, then Uber, then now I think the next breed is going to come from Swivel or something like that.
Exactly.
Right.
Let's keep an eye on the swivelers for now.
Especially in Egypt and the startup ecosystem in Cairo. Uh, Now, Diala, how's the Saudi ecosystem shaping up? Because it's getting a lot of traction now,
Exactly.
especially after what we have seen in the UAE.
Exactly. Honestly, it's quite inspiring to see what's happening in the Saudi market. On a personal level, I'm not able to keep up on what's happening every single day. And the countless numbers of initiatives that different ministries and different industry players are actually bringing to light. They're trying to empower literally as many ecosystems as they can and across the board. So, for example, you have many initiatives to support all startups and all companies in the entertainment and in the media space. You also have a lot of support and witness a lot of support to help fintech startups either move to Saudi or expand to Saudi all in all. So even though there is somehow a struggle to legally incorporate, not a struggle, it's just like a lengthy process to get your incorporation in place in Saudi. However, they're trying to digitize it as much as they can, specifically for fintechs as well. And in terms of tech startups, like there are so many plenty initiatives that I can't even get to list. One huge initiative that was recently launched in around August this year was the launch.sa. which was the biggest technology launch in the whole MENA region. During it, they announced 12 different tech programs amounting at around $1.2 billion to actually empower and activate the startup ecosystem and the overall, tech ecosystem and tech space to reach new horizons in Saudi. So there are plenty of opportunities in them. And as I mentioned during the beginning of this call, many startups, because this is an emerging market that's starting up, they believe that there is a huge opportunity for them to tap on in case they move into Saudi and be early entrants to the market. And this is definitely something worth actually considering in case a startup has funds to do, to just literally research a little bit what opportunities exist in their specific industry and what gaps exist in the market that they can jump in and fill up. In case any of your community members also would like to have one-on-one conversations, I'm more than happy to do this. I can also prepare for them some key data on what's happening in their specific industry in this country in specific. So yes, amazing opportunities honestly there. And the nice thing is that you also see it firsthand. For example, for myself, I work on so many different governmental websites on almost a daily basis, and you keep on seeing a lot of updates taking place, new in-service channels, new portals for startups and investors to make their life easier in case they want to incorporate or expand to the kingdom.
All right. Now, in the end, Diala, because of your experience, I'm asking you a weird question here, right? But none of these questions are written here, by the way. It's all empty. Right? Right? They're just popping up in my head. So, towards the end, uh, the ecosystem, the larger ecosystem of the region is nothing like what you see in the Silicon Valley or the whole of the US, or it's also very different, totally different dynamics from Europe as well, right? Because there are lots and lots of smaller economies, but the population size for some of them is quite a big opportunity. But looking at other regional states, there are smaller pockets too, where it gets difficult for startups to expand, which is why you need cross-pollination. So, in like when somebody sits at an interview and the interviewer asks them, where do you see yourself in 5 years, right? So, where do you see which country in the region do you see taking the lead, not in the next 5 years, but in the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, actually, I'm not sure how much we can compare what's happening here in the MENA region to what's happening in Silicon Valley all in all. Um, Literally, so many different dynamics come to play. The culture we first have, literally, I come from a culture where my parents, when I first told them I wanted to venture forward with launch DXB, were a little bit scared that how come you're leaving your corporate job that's a really good position and really good payment at the end of the day, to actually venture with something on your own that's going to take you years to have a proper return on investment. So coming from this type of culture, whereas in the US, it's more empowering somehow, where you're actually forced somehow, when you are 18-year-old, to move forward and move out of your house, your family's house, to actually start building your own future on your own. So culture difference is a huge factor in here. Second, technological advancement. The technologies available in the US are quite different than the ones we have here. Many countries and many ecosystems are trying to bring technological advancement to the region as much as they can, but we're still miles apart from them. And also the amount of funding. So generally, you also have a lot of investors who are well invested in the US ecosystem, who don't see any other ecosystem around and would never even think probably to branch out and to invest in other startups in different regions. And the funding available there is somehow different from the funding also our startups in the region have. So there are so many different factors that come to play that cannot allow us to actually compare what's happening in the region to Silicon Valley in general. Which country is going to lead? Honestly, this is something I am myself interested to see. Before, we believed that there was no competition to the UAE ecosystem, given the countless initiatives being run by external and internal stakeholders. But now with everything that's happening in Saudi, I have mixed feelings who's going to be actually leading on the whole space in the coming years. So I'm not sure. Honestly, this is something I myself am intrigued to see where it's going to be in these coming years.
All right. because population wise actually plays a huge role here, right? A lot of people talk about Pakistan's population of over 240 million, then the UAE with a scattered
Mm.
population, and then even in this Saudi market. But it depends really. Only we can only say that time will tell, because
Exactly.
either you'll see economies like Indonesia or something like that pop up, right? Which uh, growing exponentially due to their domestic dynamics, or either through funding, right? Whoever pumps in the most money wins the rat race, right?
Exactly. Even laying the foundations and the infrastructure for the ecosystem itself. And for
Yeah.
example, in Silicon Valley, you have a really well-established infrastructure that supports startups to actually launch their ventures from there and grow them globally. So also, it depends on which country is going to lay the best foundations for founders to come and to grow in their countries.
Mhm. That's great. Thank you very much, Diala. Thank you for joining here. I'm almost on time, I guess. Is there anything
Exactly.
that you'd like to add in the end?
That's it from my side. I'm more than happy in case any of your community members want to learn more about UAE ecosystem, Saudi ecosystem, or
Mhm.
just talk in general about startups. I'm more than happy to initiate a conversation with them. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Mm.
And also, I share a lot of educational content there. So feel free to also keep some eye out there on what's happening in these geographies and what opportunities are emerging.
That's great. Now, the same goes for Startup Talks too, because this thing only started as an initiative to basically help the larger ecosystem be more enabling through dialogue. Now, this conversation that we have today, right, whoever watches it, and even if they take a small nugget out of it, and if it is of
Exactly.
benefit to them, that's a job well done. So if you are obviously interacting with a lot of startup founders in the region, and if any one of them wishes to come and be featured over here, right, they're more than welcome. There's no charge or fee or anything like that, right? And maybe they might get some better exposure through here.
Exactly. Especially for ones who want to expand to the Pakistani ecosystem too.
Yeah,
Sure.
I've hosted some from Riyadh, the Techstars as well, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. So, Diana, thank you very much for being here on Startup Talks. It was lovely talking to you. Hopefully, we can
Same here.
have coffee either here in Pakistan or anywhere else. So, enjoy your coffee. Enjoy your stay in Turkey. Right.
Thank you. It was a pleasure connecting. I appreciate the invite.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Bye bye.